Yeah, the lighting's going to be a little bit weird, but I just wanted to be outside for today. So if the lighting tends to be horrible in this video, I promise it's not like that in every single video. So keep following. But welcome. We are continuing on with our 40 Days Through the Bible series. And today we are looking at day 4. So day 4 talks about the Tower of Babel. If you're new here, 40 Days Through the Bible by Lisa Turker, we don't know. By Lisa Turkerst. I am going to be reading out of my NIV Life Application Bible that you're going to see me pick up in just a second. So today is the Tower of Babel. So mankind tried to glorify themselves with the tower, but God dispersed them throughout the earth. So I'm going to read out of here first, just so you guys know this is not the actual Bible. I'm just reading out of here before we go reading the Bible. So today's reading comes from Genesis chapter 11. The verse of the day is Genesis 11:4. And it says, "Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over over the face of the whole earth.'" Okay. So, bam. Genesis chapter 11 from verse 1. "Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, 'Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly.' They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth.'" So just to give like a little bit of back context, if you have not seen day 3, please go watch day 3. So day 3, we talked about Noah. So the Noah thing had already happened. Like God had already seen, he was not pleased with the people. He wiped the whole earth with a flood. And so these are the first people that are, aside from Noah and his family, that are back on earth that were not there before. So everyone is concentrated in one location, okay? "But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, 'If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other.' So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world." Or Babel, which we actually have in the human language. Like when someone's babbling, we're like, "You're babbling." Like it's you speaking like words that are not words, or you speaking in a way that we don't understand. Like that, this is where that word comes from. "Because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth." So this is where this is how people end up being in different cities, different countries, different states, right? In other words, there was no countries and states at this point because we're still in Genesis, but they were just in different places across the earth. Verse 10 says, "This is the account of Shem's family line." So Shem is one of Noah's sons, okay? 2 years after the flood with Noah, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arphaxad. And after he became the father of Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and had other sons and daughters. Can I just stop for a second to say, I cannot imagine caring for a newborn as a 100-year-old. I'm sure 100 years old back in the Bible is different than our 100 years old in today's age. But I had my first daughter when I was 28 years old, and she mopped the floor with me. Like newborn, 28 years old, like I was hurting. So I can only imagine being 100. And yeah. Well, maybe it's the same though, because it says he lived to 500 or similar. It says he lived 500 years. So 100 out of 500, here goes my logical brain. 100 out of 500 is 1 out of 5. That is 20% of his life. So if we live to be 100 years old, that would be age 20. So I guess he was still kicking. If we use the ratio, he was still kicking and alive. That's like having your first kid at 20, which honestly now seems really young. Like now it seems like, ooh, why couldn't you wait a little bit longer than 100 to have a kid? But he had his kid. In verse 11 says, "And after he became the father of Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arphaxad had lived 35 years, he became the father of Shelah." Now that seems really young. Okay. "And after he became the father of Shelah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he became the father of Aber. So now we're looking at the lineage. So we've got Noah. Noah had Shem. Shem had Arphaxad. Arphaxad had Shelah. Arphaxad lived 403 years, had other sons and daughter. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he became the father of Eber. So then Shelah had Eber. And after he became the father of Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he became the father of Peleg. And he became the father of Peleg. Eber lived 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he became the father of Ru. Now, I'm going to speed this up a little bit because we're going through an entire lineage, and this is not the first time they do this. Or this is the first time they do this in the Bible, but they do it a lot, okay? Ru became the father, and after he became the father of Ru, Peleg lived. Ru was the father of Serug. Serug was the father of Nahor. Nahor was the father of Terah. And Terah was the father of Abraham. Okay. I mean, Abram. I'm sorry. He's Abram at this point. He becomes Abraham, but he's Abram at this point. So this is an account detailing the lineage from Noah to Abram. It is a direct descendant. So let's see how many we have. We've got Terah is Abram's father. So we've got Terah, Nahor, Serug, Ru, Eber, that's 5 generations. Shelah, that's 6 generations. Arphaxad, that's 7. Shem, that's 8. So 8 generations after Noah, we finally get Abram, which all of us know Abram because Abram becomes Abraham, and he is the father of many nations. Okay. I have to stop saying and everybody knows because everybody doesn't know. And if you're watching this, you may not know. And that is totally fine because this series is intentionally for people who are not familiar with their Bible, or who just desire to know more and feel like they haven't had the experience or the opportunity to dig deeper. So if you don't know, and I say, of course we all know, like, just ignore me saying that. Like, of course we don't all know. Okay. So now we're going to talk about Abram's family because we're still in chapter 11, verse 27. This is the account of Terah's family line. Okay. So Terah is the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So Abram has 2 brothers. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot. Lot's pretty popular too. You could probably find sermons about Lot. You could definitely find sermons about Abram. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans in the land of his birth. Abraham and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's, I keep calling him Abraham by accident. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, who then later becomes Sarah. And the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was childless because she was not able to conceive. This is our first time seeing trouble with conception in the Bible, which tends to be something that happens recurringly as well. Okay. So if you're having trouble conceiving, there is a lot of good, comforting verses in the Bible that could really help you. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur to the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years and he died in Haran. Okay, so that is all of chapter 11. It's just letting us know how these 2 very prominent figures are connected and how God said to Noah, you know, he told Noah what he was going to do. Hey, I'm going to wipe the earth. He did it. He kept his word. 8 generations later, we see Abram. Okay. Now, what we do not have covered, and it's not in here, but because it's not in here, we can assume there were no other major promises or no other occurrences in between Noah and Abram where God talked to a person. Okay. God talked directly to Noah. And as you see, as we're moving forward, God is going to talk directly to Abram. In between those 2, like in those 8 generations, we don't have anything. Like, we don't know, but we can just assume that he didn't because we don't have it. If it was significant, it would be in here. So let's go ahead and keep going. So that was our chapter for the day, chapter 11. Then we're going to go back to the study. Okay. So it says, through these early chapters of Genesis, we see God's people filled with pride and ambition, repeatedly engaging in acts of disobedience. So at the beginning of this chapter, remember, we see that there are people building a tower. Okay. And I want to go back and highlight this, because in chapter 11, verse 4, it says, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heaven, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. So the people thought, hey, if we build this tower, then we could be gods too. Like, God literally just wiped the earth, and here we go, making the same mistakes. But his grace, okay? But his grace. So their prideful ambition led them to fulfill the longing of their hearts in things of the world rather than God. Sound familiar? This takes us back to the longing we discussed at the beginning of the week, the beginning of this series. We learned that God created us with a longing to be known. However, he intended to fully fulfill that longing with the truth that we are fully known and loved by him. We still struggle with this. Like, people still have this longing to be known, this longing to be famous, popular, an influencer, when really you just need to be known by God. Like, that feeling will be fulfilled. We are often trying to fill a God-sized hole with Instagram, trying to fill a God-sized hole with the number of followers that we have. And lo and behold, in the end, it doesn't work. So question number 1 for today, it says, in Genesis 11:4 and 11:8, what did the people fear and what actually took place? So I kind of just read that already, but the people feared that they would be scattered upon the earth and their language scrambled, and God made it happen because they tried to exalt themselves instead of exalting him. So they knew that there was something at risk, and that meant, hey, I'm going to cause division in between this group of people. I'm going to scatter you over the earth, so you're not going to be, close to each other or near each other. They did it anyway. Boom, you see what happened, okay? So then it says, like the tower builders, we're too often fail to find our fulfillment in God. We seek after the things of this world to satisfy us. Things like recognition, popularity, and acceptance by our peers. In this account, God's people wrongly filled this longing by seeking glory for themselves, not God. Over time, their arrogance led to rebellious acts of defiance that culminated in them uniting to establish a powerful empire for themselves. Rather than looking to God for purpose and destiny, they looked to make a name for themselves. Question 2 says, imagine a scenario where they had obeyed God. How do you think this would impact the unity of nations and ethnicities today? And I put, if they had obeyed God, we would all speak one language today. There would likely be less misunderstandings, less war, famine, etc., cultural divides. That stuff came from this story. Like, us not all speaking the same language, us having various different cultures, which, I mean, I'm appreciative now that we have different cultures, but imagine how many or how fewer misunderstandings we would have if we all had the same culture. So you find the blessing in it anyways, but that's kind of what we have missed out on. And then it continues to say, God's command to his people in Genesis was to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So that's Genesis 1:28, which was a few days ago. Settling in one place and building a tower to the sky directly defied this command. So God intervened and spoke these words. This is a good example of when God says do this and you do this over here. Like, it's not blatant disobedience. Now, they were building that tower and building that city to glorify themselves. So that portion of it was like, the intention was blatant disobedient. But for God to say be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, and then for you to go over here and start building something is like, I'm missing something here, right? So that's where it comes into being like disobedience. And we have to be a little bit careful, because we put our own desires of what we want to do over what we've been called to do. And that is disobedience, even if you're not intentionally hurting someone else or actually hurting someone else, which is what we see in this story. So the Lord said, as if one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they will not understand each other. That was Genesis 11:6-7. God did just that and scattered them over the face of the earth. Oh, if only we would know that God's commands and his ways are good. Know beyond head knowledge, know and believe deep in our souls, his commands are good, his purposes are good, and he is good. So question 3 for today says, the people building the Tower of Babel wanted to make a name for themselves. They wanted self-glory rather than God's glory. Can you relate? For example, sometimes we work so hard to build our platforms on social media. In and of itself, that's not a bad thing. But when the motive behind our platform building is not pure, that's when sin enters in. We have to check our hearts. Have there been times when you have desired the attention of others more than God's glory and will in your life? So I put sometimes yes, right? I find myself more focused on growing my platforms than using my stage to bring more awareness to God. Now I have flipped the script, right? My priority is only to do what I do through godly principles and exalting his name, showcasing that my life is a testament of his favor, which is why y'all are seeing this series right now. So God calls us to obedience. God blesses and rewards obedience and brings curses and consequences for disobedience. We've watched it with our own eyes in these stories. Whether we understand them or agree with God's commands, we would do well to trust him in his ways. They're always good and he is trustworthy. Okay. So in the Bible, and that's the end of day 4, but I want to read you this little bit of an excerpt that is from today, if you could see that, about curses. So in the Bible, curses often refer to God's holy discipline as a consequence of sin. They begin in Genesis when God cursed the ground due to Adam's obedience, and that is the word that was used. They continued in Deuteronomy when God promised to send blessings or curses depending upon the people's obedience to his commands, which we'll see as we move forward. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul spoke of false teachers saying, let him be accursed. That is in Galatians 1:8. The Greek word used here is anathema, which means to devote to God for judgment. Okay, so we get that little bit of a backstory on like what curses are and how we're going to see that a little bit more, but that curses are God's way of responding to disobedience. So when we get deeper into conversations like what is a generational curse, or this is a generational curse that's going on in my family, like it's not that you're just randomly cursed, or it's that someone along the lineage made a bad decision and this is God's act of disobedience. At any point in time, you have the ability to break a generational curse. Yes, it takes a lot of prayer. It takes a lot of consistency and a lot of intentionality, but you are able to break generational curses. And it is important for you to understand the root of the generational curse and where it came from, okay? If you are attempting to change your life in some way or change something about your personality or your existence that you feel like you're just struggling to change and you're stuck, it's likely that is a red flag that you are dealing with a generational curse. The tricky thing about African American culture, at least because I'm Black, so that's all I can speak to. But the tricky thing about Black culture is that we don't verbalize things that should be verbalized. And so you may be feeling stuck in some way and not know that it's a generational curse because there wasn't enough vocalization around what is happening to you. And so that gets into a little bit of a deeper, like, you need to understand your lineage. There's a reason why the Bible takes so many big chunks of verses to detail out lineage, to help us understand where people are coming from and how those people came to be and exist here on the earth. And it's something that we have to pay attention to. So that is all I have for y'all today. I will see y'all for the next video, day 5. Bye.